Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Julie Nelson. Tonight, nearly 1,000 pounds of meth is off the streets, and so are the two suspected dealers St. Paul police officers just arrested.
Methamphetamine is flooding our communities, not in small amounts, not in backroom deals, in quantities so massive they redefine what law enforcement thought possible. Minneapolis, Minnesota, a routine undercover drug buy, two vehicles traveling separately through city streets, 889 pounds of crystal methamphetamine. Street value, $43.5 million. Enough poison to devastate an entire state. The starting point of the largest drug seizure in Minnesota history. Want to know the whole truth? Hit like and I'll show you everything. Minneapolis, Minnesota, July the 2nd, 2025. This story did not begin with a massive raid. It began with a single transaction no one could ignore. An undercover police officer working deep inside Minneapolis drug networks made contact with a man named Guillermo Mercado Chaparro. The arrangement was simple: 1 pound of methamphetamine, price $1.1912. The exchange happened in South Minneapolis. Cash for product, standard street-level operation, the kind of buy narcotics officers conduct dozens of times each month. But this transaction was different. The officer wasn't simply making a case against a single dealer. He was building probable cause for something far larger, because the patterns surrounding Mercado Chaparro didn't match a typical street distributor. His movement suggested coordination. His connections ran deeper. His supply appeared unlimited. After the controlled buy, investigators made a decision that would change everything. They obtained a court order to place a GPS tracking device on Mercado Chaparro's vehicle, a Toyota Tacoma pickup truck, the kind of vehicle you'd see anywhere in Minnesota. Unremarkable, forgettable, perfect for moving product without drawing attention. The tracker went live, and what it revealed would stun even veteran narcotics investigators. Comment exposed if you believe the public needs to see what happened next. Between July 2nd and July 7th, 2025, surveillance teams watched Mercado Chaparro move through Minneapolis. But something extraordinary happened during those 5 days. Two separate police officers working completely independent narcotics investigations both discovered they were tracking the same vehicle, the same Toyota Tacoma. One officer was assigned to the Ramsey County Sheriff's Office Violent Crime Enforcement Team, a specialized unit targeting organized drug trafficking. The other worked as a DEA task force officer, pursuing federal drug cases with interstate connections. When they compared notes, the realization was immediate. This wasn't a street dealer. This was infrastructure. This was supply chain. This was cartel-level operation. But 25 pounds, 50 pounds, those numbers were about to become irrelevant. The agency's coordinating surveillance expanded rapidly. The Drug Enforcement Administration, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Homeland Security Investigations, Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, Central Minnesota Violent Offender Task Force, Minneapolis Police Department. Every agency brought resources, electronic surveillance, physical surveillance teams, drug detection K-9 units, federal prosecutors standing by for charging decisions. GPS data showed Mercado Chaparro making repeated trips through South Minneapolis, stopping at locations consistent with drug distribution, meeting with individuals, loading and unloading items from his vehicle. The pattern was clear. The operation was active. The question was scale. Federal agents prepared for what they believed would be a significant seizure. Perhaps 100 pounds, maybe 200 if they were fortunate. Quantities that would qualify as a major bust by any standard. They had no idea what was actually coming. If you're still with us, type "justice" to see what investigators discovered on July 7th. July 7th, 2025, Monday morning, 10:30 a.m. Surveillance teams were positioned throughout South Minneapolis. Eyes on the Toyota Tacoma, eyes on Mercado Chaparro, waiting for movement. The morning began like any other. Mercado Chaparro walked to his truck parked on a residential street. Nothing unusual, nothing that drew attention from neighbors going about their day. Then he opened the truck bed. Inside were two large garbage bags, the kind you'd use for yard waste or household trash. He lifted them out, heavy, bulky. He carried them a short distance to a Jeep Wrangler parked nearby. A second man appeared, Joel Casas Santiago, 46 years old. Listed address in Minneapolis, though federal prosecutors would later emphasize he had no local ties to Metro community. Casas Santiago climbed into the driver's seat of the Jeep Wrangler. Mercado Chaparro got into his Toyota Tacoma. Both vehicles started their engines. Both vehicles drove away, separately, the Jeep heading in one direction, the Tacoma in another. Surveillance teams followed both. At the intersection of 31st Street and Cedar Avenue in South Minneapolis, officers made their move. They located both men inside the Jeep Wrangler together. Commands were given. The vehicle was stopped. A drug detection K9 was deployed. The dog alerted immediately. The odor of controlled substances emanating from the vehicle was unmistakable. Officers ordered both men out of the Jeep. Hands visible, no sudden movements. Both men complied. Both were placed under arrest. Inside the Jeep Wrangler, officers discovered the 2 garbage bags Mercado Chaparro had transferred from his truck. When they opened the bags, the scale became clear. 251 pounds of crystal methamphetamine, packaged, ready for distribution, hidden in garbage bags in a cooler as if they were transporting groceries. But the Toyota Tacoma was still on scene, unoccupied, sitting on a Minneapolis street. Officers obtained a search warrant. The truck was transported to a secure location. When investigators opened the truck bed, they found what federal prosecutors would later describe as a quantity consistent with cartel-scale trafficking: 638 pounds of methamphetamine, combined with the Jeep seizure, 889 pounds, nearly half a ton of crystal meth, seized in a single operation on a Monday morning in South Minneapolis. For context, the previous single seizure record in Minnesota history was 171 pounds. This bust was more than 5 times larger. Also recovered from the Toyota Tacoma, a suspected drug ledger. Handwritten records documenting dates, vehicles, dollar amounts. The kind of documentation that proves organization, that proves coordination, that proves this wasn't random. This was business. A prescription pill bottle in Mercado Chaparro's name was also found. During a post-arrest interview, after being read his Miranda rights, Mercado Chaparro admitted his involvement in drug trafficking. The confession was recorded. The evidence was overwhelming. The case was airtight. If you support the federal agents and local officers who risk their lives to dismantle operations like this, hit like and share. Joel Casas Santiago, 46, listed Minneapolis address. No meaningful local ties according to federal prosecutors. Guillermo Mercado Chaparro, 44, Chicago, Illinois resident, a city that serves as a major distribution hub for Mexican cartels supplying the entire Midwest. But these weren't just 2 men arrested with drugs. Federal charging documents revealed something far more concerning. Both defendants were associated with larger drug sale organizations in Mexico. Mercado Chaparro's federal indictment included a charge rarely seen in Minneapolis drug cases: illegal re-entry by a removed alien. The charge meant he had previously been deported from the United States and had illegally returned. Not to rebuild a life, not to reunite with family through proper channels, to traffic drugs. That charge alone carries 2 to 10 years in federal prison, separate from the drug conspiracy charges, separate from the mandatory minimum 10 years for conspiracy to distribute the quantity of methamphetamine seized. The cartel connections were not speculation. According to DEA intelligence and federal court documents from dozens of related cases, Minnesota has become a strategic priority for 2 of Mexico's most powerful drug trafficking organizations. July 8, 2025, the day after the arrests, the St. Paul Police Department and Ramsey County Sheriff's Office held press conferences, announced the seizure publicly. The numbers were staggering. The implications were clear. St. Paul Police posted on social media, 2 vehicles, a drug detection dog, and 960 pounds of meth. You read it right, 960 pounds of meth. The Ramsey County Sheriff's Office called it possibly one of the largest meth busts in Minnesota history. July 9, 2025, state charges filed. The Hennepin County Attorney's Office charged Joel Casas Santiago with 1 count of first-degree drug sale, charged Guillermo Mercado Chaparro with 2 counts of first-degree drug sales. Both men appeared in Hennepin County Court. Bail set at $2 million each, an extraordinarily high bail amount reflecting the magnitude of the seizure and the flight risk both defendants posed. Under Minnesota state law, the statutory minimum sentence would have been approximately 65 months, about 5 years and 5 months. But federal prosecutors were watching, and they saw something Hennepin County couldn't pursue, something that required federal jurisdiction, something that carried penalties measured not in years, but in decades. July 17, 2025, federal grand jury returns indictments. Acting U.S. Attorney Joseph H. Thompson announced the case would proceed in federal court. The charges: conspiracy to distribute methamphetamine under Title 21, United States Code, Section 846. For conspiracy to distribute 500 grams or more of methamphetamine, federal sentencing guidelines mandate a minimum of 10 years imprisonment and a maximum of life. Casas Santiago and Mercado Chaparro had been caught with approximately 403,000 grams. more than 800 times the threshold for mandatory minimum sentencing. Mercado Chaparro faced the additional charge of illegal re-entry by a removed alien. The case was assigned to Assistant U.S. Attorneys Alan Slaughter and Campbell Warner. Both prosecutors work within the Minnesota Homeland Security Task Force as part of Operation Take Back America, a federal initiative established by executive order targeting cartel operations and transnational criminal organizations. July 22, 2025. Federal arraignment. Both defendants appeared in United States District Court for the District of Minnesota. The federal magistrate judge reviewed the charges, reviewed the evidence, reviewed the risk assessment. Decision. Both defendants ordered held without bail. No amount of money would secure their release. The flight risk was too high. The danger to the community was too severe. The evidence of cartel connections was too strong. July 29, 2025. State charges dropped. The Hennepin County Attorney's Office formally dismissed all state charges against both defendants. The case now belonged entirely to federal prosecutors. Just weeks earlier, in June 2025, federal agents discovered over 900 pounds of crystal methamphetamine hidden inside a storage unit in Burnsville, Minnesota. The drugs were valued at $22 to $25 million. They were concealed inside multiple tubes separately held in large spools of metal. Sophisticated concealment designed to evade detection during transport. On June 3, 2025, authorities executed search warrants at 8 locations across Burnsville, Inver Grove Heights, Lakeville, Bloomington, Minneapolis, and Northfield. Agents seized gold-plated firearms, movie portraits from Scarface, common decor among narco-traffickers, documents, digital evidence, the kind of materials that build federal conspiracy cases. That same day, June 3rd in Wilmar, Minnesota, authorities seized another 650 pounds of methamphetamine hidden in flower boxes with false bottoms, 182 boxes of flowers, each containing approximately 3 pounds of meth in secret compartments. 2 suspects arrested. Together, the 3 operations in June and July 2025 removed more than 2,500 pounds of methamphetamine from Minnesota, over 1 ton, in a single month. For historical comparison, the previous single seizure record in Minnesota was 171 pounds. The July bust alone was 5.6 times larger than that record. The statistics confirmed what agents were seeing on the ground. Federal drug agents saw a 142% increase in methamphetamine captured in Minnesota in 2024, totaling 2,080 pounds for the year. The July 2025 bust follows the December 2024 sentencing of Clinton James Ward, described by federal prosecutors as the mastermind behind the most prolific drug operation in Minnesota history. Ward received 23 years in federal prison for operating a trafficking network from 2019 to 2024 that imported drugs from Jalisco, Mexico, with connections to both the Sinaloa and CJNG cartels. Ward's organization was responsible for distributing 4,600 plus pounds of methamphetamine, 4 kilograms of cocaine, 2 kilograms of fentanyl, 30,000 fentanyl pills, 45 firearms, $2.5 million in drug proceeds. More than 50 defendants were charged with connections to Ward's network. DEA Special Agent in charge, Stephen T. Bell, stated, "Ward's organization left a trail of destruction in its wake." The Ward case established that Mexican cartels view Minnesota not as a peripheral market, but as a strategic priority, a finding reinforced by the scale of the 2025 seizures. The July bust involving Casa Santiago and Mercado Chaparro represents not an isolated incident, but a continuation of cartel operations that have made Minnesota what federal prosecutors now call a narcotics hub for Mexican cartels. In the end, this story was never only about 889 pounds of methamphetamine. It was never only about 2 suspects arrested during traffic stops. It was never only about one Monday morning in July 2025. This story is about a system, a pipeline, an infrastructure built by Mexican cartels to flood American communities with poison. An operation so sophisticated, so well-funded, and so profitable that traffickers were willing to transport nearly half a ton of methamphetamine in garbage bags through city streets in broad daylight. The investigation revealed how easily danger can move through spaces people consider safe, how traffickers exploit ordinary vehicles, ordinary routes, ordinary moments to transport extraordinary quantities of drugs. 889 pounds of crystal methamphetamine, $43.5 million street value. Cartel connections to Mexico, interstate distribution networks, federal conspiracy charges carrying potential life sentences. Both Joel Casas Santiago and Guillermo Mercado Chaparro remain in federal custody, held without bail. They face mandatory minimum sentences of 10 years imprisonment. Given the quantity involved, 889 pounds, and their alleged connections to Mexican drug organizations, federal prosecutors will likely seek sentences at the higher end of guidelines, potentially 20 years to life. 889 pounds, seized in a single operation, on a Monday morning, in Minneapolis, the largest methamphetamine bust in Minnesota history. The cartels thought Minnesota was an open market. Federal law enforcement proved them wrong.